history, but the one thing that's important to remember is that these designations had implications. They had important implications. I mean, if you were listed as Japanese, that really limited your possibilities in this country.
Now, what about the patterns of settlement that we see now as compared back in the 60s?
Well, as I mentioned before, you had much more of an enclave phenomenon back in the 60s. Nowadays, with immigrants sort of settling on a one-by-one or family-by-family basis, they tend to choose where they want to settle more deliberately. They're interested in particular things, schools, transportation, etc. And as a result of that, you don't have that enclave phenomenon like we used to. In Fairfax County, Virginia, which is what I write about, there's a place called Koreatown. But the biggest population, biggest ethnic group in Koreatown is Hispanic. So you just don't see, there was actually an interesting survey done in Fairfax County that measured the diversity of the county, and the diversity was measured by the likelihood that two people taken at random from a neighborhood would be of different ethnic groups, and it was the highest of any.
Have you ever seen this before?
Whole metropolitan area. This is a place where people are.
Just turn it into a chrysalis.
I write in this book about 3 young men who went to high school together at Fairfax High School. A boy from Bolivia, one of the.
So does it like eject stuff from all around it?
When he turns into a butterfly, they do.
They were going to high school, in a high school where there are many immigrants, and they found that they had so much in common. They all came here at about the age of 9 or 10. They had really different times. They had strong families. They had a lot to overcome, and they became very close friends, closer than they were with white Native Americans, native-born Americans. And so those immigrants find they have bonds in common, even though they're from very different backgrounds personally.
And you're listening to the Diane Radio Show.
Very cool.
Tom Joan, I'm so interested that you are turning to the coverage of religion in this country after your long years in both defense.
Why do I keep getting sad eyes there, Matilda?
What did the act do to the religious makeup of this country?
I think that what the significance of this act is that it forced America, really for the first time, to deal with the idea that it is not going to be a white Anglo-Saxon Judeo-Christian nation exclusively. I think, George Washington, way back in 1783, said the bosom of America is open to accept not only the respectable and opulent stranger, but the oppressed and persecuted of all nations and religions. That was in 1783, but it was an empty promise, Diane. It was an empty promise because really for the next 200 years, or all close to 200 years, we really did see ourselves as a white European Judeo-Christian nation. And now, with the influx of people from Asia, from the Middle East, from Muslim countries, from African countries, we are finally sort of discovering what does it mean to be an exceptional nation, and a nation that is defined not by religion, not by race, not by nationality, but by adherence to a creed, a set of ideas that the American idea is all about. And, we've preached about that for many, many years, but it's really only been in the last 50 years that we have begun to experiment with what that actually means.
And there is still debate as to whether the change in immigration laws, the influx of the immigrants,
This video has been narrated by NPR.
As you well know, I covered the war in the former Yugoslavia, and I know the reality of interethnic conflict and how people, the slightest differences can become exaggerated under conditions of stress and really lead to a fragmentation of society. And that is a potential which I don't think that we can underestimate. I mean, there are, particularly as resources are strained and people are competing with each other, the danger that religious and ethnic differences can flare up and set people against each other is very real. And I think that with the changes in our population over the last 50 years, the prospect of that kind of conflict is something that we can't On the other hand, you know, and I go back to the example of those three boys from very different backgrounds. To the extent that Americans can sort of discover bonds
How long will they
between
stay at
each
Christmas?
other and focus on what they have in
Like
common
8 to
as
10
opposed
days.
to what separates them, that does make for a stronger country. It makes for a more resilient country. It makes for a country that can deal with stress more successfully. And it has, I think, a stronger sense of itself that's based on ideas and not some narrow notion of race or blood.
But it also means you've got to have good leadership at the top, talking exactly about that.
And you know, one of the interesting things, Diane, is how different leaders, different people talk when they're in campaign mode versus in governing mode. I mean, you know, you see right now with Republican candidates seeming to outdo each other with, you know, comments about immigration. But take somebody like George W. Bush, who was a very conservative president, and in the aftermath of 9/11 was really exemplary in the way that he reached out to Muslim communities, and it's because leaders know they have to lead the whole country.
Tom Shelton, correspondent for NPR, covering religion and belief. His new book, A Nation of Nations, a great American immigration story. Congratulations, Tom.
Thank you so much, Diane. Great to see you.
And thanks for listening all. I'm Diane Reed.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from American Cruise Line, exploring historic waterways of the U.S. With journeys including Mississippi River and Lewis and Clark cruises. American Cruise Line. Small ship cruising done perfectly. AmericanCruiseLines.com/NPR. And from Home Instead Senior Care, providing an individualized approach designed to meet a family's needs. Offering a range of in-home care services from help around the house to Alzheimer's care. To keep aging loved ones at home. HomeInstead.com/NPR.
On the next Diane Rehm Show, a conversation with Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, his reflections on recent decisions, and why he believes the U.S. Supreme Court needs to be more global in its perspective.
That's tomorrow at 11 on 91.7 WGXU Cincinnati and 88.5 WNUV Oxford.
Support comes from the Center for Business Analytics at the University of Cincinnati, presenting Using Data Visualization, September 17th and 18th. This course covers how to use data visualization to create effective insights and dashboards, generating action from complex data. Registration at regonline/datavisualization2015 or 556-4742.
The latest statistics show 18% of the Cincinnati tri-state population lives in poverty. And in a 2-square-mile area of Middletown, every single Latino child is poor by federal poverty standards. On the next Cincinnati edition, WCPO.com reporter Lucy May joins us for a look at poverty and the local Latino community. And we'll hear about the history and future of the American Cane Company building in Northside. That's this afternoon on Cincinnati edition at 1 on 91.7 WVXU.
Sunny skies today at a high of 80, going down to 56 tonight. Tomorrow, sunny skies and a high of 82.
From WHYY in Philadelphia, I'm Terry Gross with Fresh Air. Mary Carr is known for her memoirs, The Liars Club, Cherry, and Lit, and she's often credited with popularizing the form. Her new book is about writing memoirs.
It's such a low-rent form compared to, say, the novel. I mean, there's no danger of my being invited to the American Academy, you know? Even though it has this huge readership, I felt some lingering obligation to defend it.
Today, Carr tells us about writing truthfully about people she's been close to without betraying them. People like her parents, her ex-husband, and the late writer David Foster Wallace.
David was very kindly treated. There were, if I wanted to burn David's house down, I could have done that. And I didn't really go into what it was like today, except that it was tumultuous.
Mary Carr, coming up on Fresh Air. First news. NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. A nearly week-long teacher strike in Washington State's largest school district may soon be over. If the Seattle Teachers Union's executive board approves a tentative agreement reached today with the district, the strike will be called off. Educators had complained about pay, evaluations, longer school hours, and other labor issues when they decided to walk out. That decision delayed the start of the new school year for 53,000 students. Taking on the union won Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker a large following among Republicans nationwide when he took office. Now that he's a presidential candidate, Walker is again leaning on the bargaining rights issue to help revive a sluggish campaign, as NPR's Don Gagne explains.
Scott Walker became a hero to conservatives 4 years ago by taking on public sector unions in Wisconsin and slashing their collective bargaining rights. He says as president, he'd do even more, and says he's already tested.
They overtook our capital. In fact, there was more than 100,000 protesters that occupied our state capital, and we didn't back down. They issued death threats against me. There were threats against my family. We didn't back down.
Walker, speaking in Las Vegas, says he'll ban unions for federal government employees and get rid of the National Labor Relations Board. Though any such action would require an act of Congress. Don Gagne, NPR News.
Classes at Delta State University in Mississippi are canceled for the day as students and faculty mourn the death of a history professor who was murdered on campus yesterday. The vigil is scheduled
the
by
thing-
Nathan Schmidt. Local authorities
When Mitch
say
Daniels
killed
became
by
governor of
shotgun
Indiana,
while
he did away with
University
bargaining,
is also suspected
our
of
collective
shooting
bargaining,
a woman
and I
who
didn't
fled.
see any of the
Police say
near the
Schmidt
protests that they
was
had,
killed
like in
last night
Wisconsin.
as police closed in on him. Police are still investigating motive. The European Union will
Yeah,
hold
I
an
don't know
emergency
why.
session next week to address the growing migrant crisis facing the continent. NPR's Sarah Sarhadi Nelson reports from Berlin. The meeting